In this video, we're going to explore how sportsbooks set lines and why that is so important to understand in order to profit in sports betting. My name is MGCovers. Welcome to this video. Before we start, don't forget today is Free Fridays. If you follow me over on Instagram, there's a link in the description of this video. I give out all my lines for all sports there, so follow me on Instagram and you get access to all my lines for today, which is last day of January 31st, 2025. Okay, before we dive into this video, I do want to show you the betting log for NHL. We've had a ton of success with NHL this month. Currently 16-10, had a 3-0 sweep last night. Really solid run, up 5.93 units. If you're new, we grade one play as 1 unit. There's no 5-unit plays, no 2-unit plays. Each play is graded as 1 unit. So that's well over 60% with this model. So super excited about the progress we've made with this model. Now, in the next slide, what you're seeing these are lines from last night, 1:30. Of course, we played Winnipeg, Tampa, and New York Islanders. Went 3-0 with those wagers. But what I'm going to talk about in this video, we're going to talk about how sportsbooks set lines. So first off, I want to look at the screenshot is a screenshot of sportsbook lines. And let's look at the Columbus Vegas NHL game. You can see there that line opened at plus 200 for Columbus. It moved all the way against them. Some books had it at 250, 237, 228. And you can see there Columbus was the favorite, opened at 226, minus 226, and went all the way as high as minus 290, minus 300 at some of the other books. All right, here is the definition of how sportsbooks set lines. Sportsbooks set lines based on the perceived market value of that team. It is not a statistically driven model. They set the lines based on the perceived market value. Very similar to the stock market. If the economy is doing well in America, the majority of stocks, for the most part, will increase, or the overall stock market will increase. If the economy is doing bad, or the public perceives the economy doing bad, irregardless of that individual stock, the majority of the stock market goes down. That's just how it works. And the same is true in sports betting. So when you look at this Columbus Vegas game, the overall perceived market value of Vegas was way higher than the perceived market value of Columbus. So the books have to create a line based on that market perception. So what happens if they don't do that? Well, take a look at my line. My line was Columbus minus 124, Vegas plus 131. And again, this game went to overtime. Either team could have won it essentially, but obviously the books line was way off compared to my line. My line was way more accurate than the actual books line. And this is what I identify or classify as a 50-50 game. So what would happen if the books created a line based on the actual stats similar to my line? So what if they made the line, let's say it was a 20-cent line, minus Columbus minus 110, Vegas minus 110. The majority of people would have jumped on Vegas because they would perceived that as extreme amount of value, because the market actually perceived Vegas to be somewhere around minus 250. So if Vegas sets a line based on statistics, the way I had the line calculated via my model, which is 100% statistically driven on stats that correlate to winning, there's no bias factored into that line, meaning I didn't make that line up. So if Vegas sets a, quote, statistical line, they make it minus 110, the majority of people would play Vegas because they would perceive that as a ton of value. And that would, even though the Columbus won, that would have created a huge liability for the sports books. Sports books do not want liabilities. A lot of times you hear the phrase, books want even action. That's actually, I understand what people are saying, and partially that's true, but more so than that, they don't want liabilities. As long as they don't have a liability, they're in good shape. And if they do have a liability, they want to have a liability on the public side, meaning they're going to position themselves to be on the, quote, sharp side, because they know that the sharps will win, quote, a majority of the time. So the advantage for you, if you approach sports betting the way I do, which is 100% statistically driven with a model, you're able to recognize an extreme amount of value. So in this particular case, Columbus, what I call, this was a 50-50 game. And if you'd have played that, you'd have been, depending on what line you got, plus 228. And also take a look at Detroit, Edmonton, same exact thing. Edmonton was minus 263. Detroit was plus 231, plus 216. Take a look at my line. My line was Detroit minus 105, Edmonton minus 113. I don't set a favorite or a dog like the books do. It's mainly just based on stats. So again, same as before, we had that game as even, and Detroit wins that one. And if you look at Anaheim and Calgary, same deal there. We had that one basically even. Calgary wins. And the same with San Jose and Seattle. Seattle slight edge at plus 120, but considering both those teams were a dog, we had that. I labeled that as a, quote, 50-50 game. And with those 4 games, 2 of the dogs won and 2 of those dogs lost because they were 50-50 games that favors the dog. So adding that up, you would have won a gross amount of roughly 4.5 units. You lose 2 units, so you'd be up 2.5 units, hitting 50%. So that's the whole concept behind a 50-50 game. But the main takeaway is when you're understanding how sportsbooks set lines, there is a ton of bias factored into that line. It is based on the public's perceived value of that line. So in order to capitalize on this, you have to have a statistically driven model. Because if you don't have a statistically driven model without bias, how do you know the line that the sportsbook set is correct or accurate? You don't, which is why it's so important to have a model. And with that being said, if you want access to this model, it's $50 a month. You get access to all my lines, very inexpensive. There's a link to join in the description. If you join for a year, that's the best value. It's $500, gives you access to everything on the site, including my coaching videos, as well as my own personal plays. Link to join in the description box. Greatly appreciate you watching this video. Good luck this weekend, and talk to you guys soon. Peace.